Order, order. Hello and welcome to Reporters Without Orders, a podcast where we talk about what made news, what didn't, and some things that absolutely shouldn't have. I'm your host, Tanishka Sodhi, and joining me in the studio are my colleagues, Pratyush Deep and Sumedha Mittal. Hi guys, how are you doing?
I'm good, yeah.
Are you excited to be here?
Yeah,
Okay.
very much.
And Pratyush actually did a story a few days ago which is related to the cash for query allegations against TMC MP Mahua Moitra, which the Lok Sabha Ethics Committee is soon going to be hearing. Advocate Jay Anand Dehadre and Hiranandani Group CEO Darshan Hiranandani have alleged that the MP took bribes to ask questions in the parliament, which she has outright denied. We'll get into the story soon. Sumedha's story, on the other hand, is a deep dive into how FCRA is being used to crack down on NGOs. It's an elaborate story with data points, anecdotes, and also talks about the impact that this crackdown is having on NGOs. So Sumedha, starting with your story, can you explain this crackdown and how many NGOs have been affected?
Yeah, so just for our viewers, FCRA is Foreign Contribution Regulations Act. So whatever the money which comes from foreign countries to India, the government introduced this act to regulate that money. So our NGOs, which is also a civil society, are heavily dependent on these foreign contributions.
Okay.
This is a detailed piece and this is a paywall story. So you have to be a Newslaundry subscriber to read this story. And so yeah, coming to your question that why about the crackdown. So I was just analyzing data of number of NGOs whose license has been cancelled from 2012 to 2023. And I saw that right after Narendra Modi came into power in 2014. In 2015, around 10,000 NGOs license was cancelled. And from 2014 to 2023, there are around 20,000 NGOs have lost their FCRA registration. And it's a big number because if they don't have FCRA registration, that means they cannot take money from the foreign contributors. They cannot accept donations. And as a result, there was a lot of we have taken a case study of some 4 NGOs in our story, which is Oxfam India, Care India, and Center for Equity Studies. And the 4th one is SLIC, Social Legal Information Center. So we have found that over 2,400 people lost their job. And it's not just the story of job loss. It's also the story of that how many projects they had to let go of because they don't have donation, they don't have funding to support their work. Basically, they are saying that it's an attack on the civil society because, for example, take the case of Oxfam India. They had FCRA registration from 35 years and it was never a problem. So the officers there I spoke to, they were asking me why it has become a problem now.
Right.
And we all know the kind of reports which Oxfam India would publish, which the government of India might not be very happy about it. It punches the government's narrative that everything is well in India. So yeah, that's the whole...
So just a layman's question. Why do NGOs rely so heavily on FCRAs that the cancellation can affect them so much?
So because in India, there's the philanthropy culture is not that strong. If we look at it historically also. And Indian donors, they don't give money. They don't give a lot of money for research and advocacy kind of work. Because that work would always, produce kind of reports or data or would be litigation work, which will question any government in power. For example, we have taken the case study of Social Legal Information Center. So when I was talking to one of the founders of SLIC, Colin Gonsalves, he was saying, I asked him, why over 95% of SLIC's funding came from foreign donations. So he told me it's because who would give money in India to do litigation work?
And on what basis has the FCRA been cancelled?
For some NGOs, the basis are they were not complying with FCRA norms, and so one of the top officers said that it's like nitpicking. Just because we haven't crossed the T's and dotted the I's, our FCRA license was suspended. And for others, that we have also found that there were links to some projects like Adani maybe, and because they were involved in protesting a protest against Adani.
Right. But what reason do they give, or do they not have to give a reason when they cancel?
This reason was not explicitly mentioned in their FCRA revocation order, but this reason that they were involved in protest against Adani was mentioned in two of the NGOs who lost their income tax exemption status, which was Life and Environics Trust. It was like, not Life, sorry, in Oxfam India and Environics Trust.
Okay.
So it was like very clearly mentioned in their income tax order that, like, because these NGOs were involved in protest against Adani, they have lost their income tax exemption status. But that's income tax exemption status. We're talking about FCRA.
Right.
So that's why, like, these were like maybe some small things, and they were not. So as per the act says that if the government wants to suspend or cancel your FCRA, they have to give one chance to hear your case. For example, but in the case of CHRI, they said that, we were not informed. Like, we just received that our FCRA has been suspended out of the blue.
So they did not get a chance.
They didn't get a chance.
Yeah.
So then they challenged the government's order in the court. So they took the matter to the court. So all these NGOs whose example we have taken, like one common thing is that they have all challenged whether it's suspension or non-renewal orders in the Delhi High Court.
Okay.
And the cases have been pending from 1.5 years or 2 years.
And out of these 20,000 case studies, I mean, how many cases have made it to the court? How many are appealing against it?
That data, unfortunately, we don't have.
Okay.
Like, I try to talk to a lot of lawyers and, like a lot of people in the NGO sector or NGOs Association, Vani. But they said that they haven't maintained that kind of a data, because if we would have been able to get that kind of data, it would have been fantastic to know, like, what is the battle inside the courts.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe a follow-up story, but I'm sure it would take months to really get that data together.
But in a lot of cases, these cases are not even public.
Okay. And
these NGOs are not talking very publicly about, yes, we have challenged the government's order in the court, because they're still hanging by thread. And their entire survival is hanging by thread. And they are saying that, like, we don't know why we are facing the brunt of everything, and we don't want to lose any chance for our, like, even the slightest opportunity to survive in the market.
So as you have said, like, because in India we don't have a philanthropy or donation culture, and that's because these NGOs have to rely on the FCRA. But don't you think that also impacts the work they do, or that make, like, like the government plays around the narrative,
True.
Like, even if I'm doing something good, like, they can play it around my work because I'm getting fund from the foreign country or from some foreign organization. So what do they say about this whole thing? The narrative that gives the FCRA thing gives the government the narrative angle, no? There is a narrative. True. They are writing against us because they are getting fund from it.
Yeah, and
that's what happened with Newslaundry.
Yeah, right.
So,
which you were
so is there is no alternative model for it?
So that was the thing. So there was this Justice Khanvilkar's very recent judgment in 2020, because government further tightened the screw of the NGO sector by introducing some amendments to the FCRA Act. So, and the entire NGO sector was like very vocal about these amendments. They said, no, we don't want...
It is BJP, tomorrow there will be Congress. Congress will do the same, because government has the power.
True, you're correct.
They can play around the narrative.
You're absolutely correct. So Justice Khanvilkar said that, like, these NGOs, exactly that, they are running this foreign narrative in the country. So therefore they should be dependent on Indian donors, and that's when Indian donors have come into picture. Like, we have found this in our story, that when their FCRA is suspended or cancelled, the Indian donors have also backed out, fearing the reprisals from the government.
Okay.
So they are saying that one of the Indian donors, I think we shouldn't name that Indian donor in the podcast, but we have mentioned this name in the story because we have reached out to them and we're still waiting for the response. And so the NGOs, these two NGOs who were receiving like good amount of grant from this particular donor which I'm talking about, they said that the government had inquired them for giving funding to us, and therefore, they introduced this as a policy to not give funding to us after our FCRA was suspended. So when they don't have support of Indian donors, they don't have, or foreign donors, then how are they're going to survive? And in Slick's case, which was funded by Colin, we saw like 15 offices across India have been shut down. And that was the biggest NGO of pro bono work.
Yeah.
Legal
So
legal
what
pro
is the
bono work.
alternative model for funding? Is
That's
there
what
any-
we are all struggling with. They are all, the officers were all telling me that the alternative model could have been Indian donors. But again, they are not that bold or courageous to support us. What do you think, Pratyush? What
Do you have an alternative
don't know,
model in
like-
mind? Because your
No,
brain
this
seems to be
question
doing
came
some
to my mind
calculation.
actually.
Yeah,
While-
like we
while
need to
listening to her whole
Yeah.
thing, no, then that question came to mind because it is easy to make a narrative around your foreign
Yeah,
contribution.
just
no?
saying anti-India and everything.
Anti-India.
But
If you write something, they say, oh, US is funding anti-India.
And
right-
Pakistan is funding.
True,
India.
and right after Narendra Modi came to power in May 2014, in June 2014, while I was doing my research, I found that IB came out with a report about Greenpeace saying the same thing, that, they are spinning some foreign narrative in
Yeah.
India,
Wow,
which is
but so
anti-development.
fast they worked
Just in
in
like
1
1 month.
But tell me, how many of these NGOs are very critical of the government? Because I see some of them do publish reports that can be seen as critical,
True.
but they are still not
There
really.
are a lot of NGOs who are not that critical. For example, there's this, of course, like we could not, we didn't have that kind of a bandwidth and resources to go through all
Of
like
course,
20,000
yeah.
NGOs and what kind of work they do. So the NGOs whose FCRA has been suspended or cancelled, they can be categorized into 4 categories. One is that which were getting huge amount of foreign donations, but they were not that critical of the government. For example, in that category, Care India might fit because Care India works very closely
Yeah,
with state governments like
right.
Bihar and UP, and so they are not very critical of the government. Like if you go through their website, you won't see any reports. They don't come out with these kind of reports like Oxfam. Then so why they are saying that, why they are being targeted, because the government of the day has that kind of a narrative that we are not dependent on foreign donations. Like anti-foreign kind of.
So it is a basic
Narrative.
mindset of the government.
That's what they are saying. Like one of the officers said, like हमने तो कोविड के टाइम पे गोरखपुर में भी हॉस्पिटल बनाया था, तो हमें क्यों टारगेट किया?
So what government wants the no organization should rely on foreign funding. Then the FCRA should be revoked.
Revoked. True.
Well, the act should be.
And the interesting thing is that FCRA was introduced during emergency time.
Okay.
Yeah, like the law was introduced in 1976 during when Indira Gandhi imposed emergency. So it's not like the first time when
And now it
this
is being-
whole the act was introduced in
Yeah.
1976. So the second kind of categories of the NGOs which are critical of the government, which are like Oxfam India, they'll come out with reports which punctures the narrative that there's no poverty in India. Then there's third kind of NGOs who work on environment sector, because they are being seen as anti-development or they question the top businessmen like Life, Environics Trust. And then there's fourth, which they are saying is that the faith-based organizations. But the fourth category, I don't know, like big names have been targeted in the past, like one of the NGOs by Mother Teresa, Christian, what Missionaries of Charity. It also got their FCRA suspended, but then within a week they gained their FCRA back. So that's a mystery.
Yeah, what happened there?
What happened within that 1 week?
Yeah, definitely.
Because there was a lot of international
I'm
backlash
sure.
about it.
Want to speak to you in detail about
Yeah.
the impact, but we'll just also discuss Pratyush's story. So Pratyush, before we get into the whole cash for query allegations and what your story is about, can you give us a little bit background of what this controversy is?
So basically, one of her acquaintance, we can say, Jay Anand Dehadrai, is an advocate. So he filed a complaint to CBI as well as BJP MP Nisikant Dubey, alleging that Mahua was asking certain questions in the parliament on behalf of Hirandani Group, basically naming Darshan Hirandani, the CEO of the Hirandani Group. So allegation is that Hirandani has some business interest which are in conflict with Adani. Basically, Adani and Hirandani is a business competitors.
Right.
And Mahua was helping Hirandani by asking questions against Adani or targeting Adani in her questions in the parliament.
Okay.
So, and in exchange, it was alleged she used to get expensive gifts and all.
Right.
So that is the basic part of it. Then, the parliament's ethic committee is now going to, I think, going to hear it on October 26th, Thursday.
Okay.
So, but I think CBI hasn't registered yet the complaint. I'm not sure about it, but
So
the complaint is there in the CBI.
Okay.
So basically, according to the allegations, out of the 62 questions asked by the Mahua, around 51 has to do with this business is to favor
Adani or
the
Hirandani, right.
Hirandani group. So I had also got access to the complaint filed by Dehadrai to the CBI. Where he listed out all the 61. He listed out 61 questions, and it's kind of a list where he puts out the question and then he gives a remark. This question has to do allegations
Right.
basis, but we also researched and we tried to look into through her questions. So we found that there are at least 9 questions where it has to do with Adani's.
Yeah.
And in I think 2 to 3 of them, Adani's name was clearly mentioned.
Yeah.
And some of them it was about Dhimra port,
Right.
which is in Orissa, and
Right.
it is Adani's business interest, or everybody knows. So Dhimra port is actually her first question in parliament.
Okay.
She got elected in 2019. Her first question in July 2019, if I'm not wrong, was about Adani's Dhimra port.
Okay.
About this, about the IOCL and GAIL's business interest in the Dhimra.
But tell me one thing, if you found that there were 9 questions relating to the Adani Group that she had asked, on how has he listed around 50 questions? Like, are they the same questions in the house that he has interpreted differently, or are they questions that are just not there on the house?
No. He
we have
has
access,
listed.
like you can easily
he has
access.
listed correct questions. The
Okay.
questions asked by Mahua, he has listed only them.
Yeah.
I think there is only one question missed in his complaint,
Okay.
which is also against Adani's, but I don't know why he missed that out. Maybe he didn't saw it, or we don't know. But the point is, he mentioned the right questions, but he is trying to link everything to in business interest of Hirandani. For example, there was a question on natural gas, related natural gas, which is not very specific, and it has nothing to. I don't see it has some business interest,
Right.
but we cannot say it
Of course.
right now. But he says because natural gas is also a main business of Hirandani Group, so this is to help Hirandani.
Okay.
So every question she is
Like
asking,
he's like joined dots, very loose.
very loose joining of dots.
Yeah.
But there are some certain questions to be correct. There is one question by Mahua which was where she mentioned H Energy, which is a subsidiary of Hirandani Group. So H Energy's, I think, business dealing about. Let me read you the question. You will get it. It was asked on August 4, 2021. So see, it's about H Energy, which is owned by the Hirandani Group. So the question was to the external affairs. She asks whether the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board had authorized IOCL, GAIL and H Energy to build a natural gas pipeline through Bengal to Bangladesh border. So she asked about the status of a project run by H Energy, which is Hirandani. So here we can say, of course, why does she need to know about the H Energy's, project, about the government approving the project run by the H Energy? There we can raise some kind of a question. Okay.
But I mean, if we go about raising questions about questions that you know MPs are asking, then it is a little subjective, right?
Right,
like,
very subjective.
yeah.
Even in this case, she might say it is a public interest thing.
Yeah.
It's a business between two countries, India and
Yeah.
Bangladesh. So Bengal's interest is also there. Economic
Yeah.
interest is there. So we cannot say directly, but the complaint that we saw on the CBI, so it tries to link everything to matlab Hirandani Group.
Right. And tell me a little about the 2005 cash for query scam. While reading your story, I came across references to that, and I believe a sting operation, I think it was Cobra Post, that showed 11 MPs accepting cash in exchange for raising questions in the parliament. Can you tell us a little about that and how
that was a that was a very interesting operation. I read it in Aniruddha's book.
Okay.
So because we were very small,
the book which
kids,
you recommended on
last
the last
time.
podcast.
It was there. It is a very good chapter on the cash for query thing of 2005-06.
Right.
So what they did is they sent a reporter in the case showing her.
Operation,
it's a sting operation, basically
always.
saying, this is our company, and we have some business interests, and we want you to asks these questions. And interestingly, wahan pe, if you read the book, there are very good references. They put certain questions which have no meaning at all. They made a name of fake company, and it passed through all the process in the parliament. The MP asked the question, then the secretariat put it before the ministry, and ministry even answered.
And they were made up companies.
Companies' names were made up. Very funny names were there. Very funny questions. Like if somebody with a logical mind would have read it very seriously, they would have gotten, "Arey yaar, what is this about?"
So
it is nothing. There is no fact check basically. And even Aniruddha in his book says they did it just to show how loose this whole process.
And 11 MPs were shown. So was there a case after that? What happened?
There was a case going on, but I'm not sure about but I think, there was a case.
But
there was an inquiry committee by one of the retired Supreme Court judges, if I'm not wrong. And it indeed called the reporters, journalists to, about
so that was, but there was visual evidence.
It didn't result in any,
But there was visual evidence. I think the main difference between that and this is firstly visual evidence, and secondly, in your report you mentioned that there's no money trail,
money trail, and there is all these are very subjective, no?
Yeah.
Just because she asked a question about a company, you cannot say she took money to ask the question.
Right.
And you have to prove these two parts, you have to link it up.
Right.
She asked this question on this date, she received this thing on prior to the asking question.
What was her relation with Hiranandani? I believe Jay was a close personal friend of hers, but was Hiranandani also a
That's
close friend?
That's what she has been telling on the social media. Hiranandani is Darshan Hiranandani is a good friend. That's what say. But we don't know if they have any business interest.
Right. And how has she responded to the allegations?
She has been responding. She has been denying everything. She has been saying she has been targeted just because she has been raising question against the Adani.
Right.
So
which she has. I mean, whether or not it has any interest, which I'm sure the investigation.
And interestingly, all those who raise questions against Adani have to face some kind of this kind of it's a question
very
for
interesting.
if you check
actually I was about to say this that it's not surprising anymore to see how all of our stories are revolving in a way one way or another around Mr. Adani.
Even I noticed one thing very when I did a story on Adani, first day it was very normal response on the Twitter, but on the second day I started as I saw 3-4 accounts these are kind of bot accounts, I believe. They started to so what is wrong with this Adani is that they tried to support
Adani.
Adani.
With my story.
Then you check their profile, they will have only posts related to Adani only. So this might be a new social media troll team managed by the Adani Group.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, investigation should be done since something like this has happened before. But I also feel like I very often see Mahua being targeted online for things like having an expensive bag, having a drink, smoking with someone. I mean, she is an easy target also because she is very vocal, and I believe she's had misogyny. I think she was working at a high-profile job before, so she clearly has the
and she is a woman with her own we're not advocating for Mahua, but
of course, but it's just
let's just address the elephant in the room that misogyny does exist.
Whatever we say, her party is not even standing with her. If you say the recent statement by the TMC, they are saying we will only comment after the Parliament Ethics Committee gives whatever says.
Maybe that's a good thing that they are investigating into it and they're not pushing it under the carpet, I guess.
Right.
It's also about who is part of the committee.
Committee is it has BJP, majority of BJP MPs. So of course,
And where do you see this going? Because last week, at least on social media, this story was all everyone was talking about.
Maybe BJP will keep it in the public memory.
And wait, please tell me about Henry, the dog. How is he involved? And Pratyush and I have had many arguments because I'm a big dog lover. He is kind of the opposite. So yes, I have to bring up Henry, the elephant in the room, or the dog in the room.
I think last news about Henry was Mahua's lawyer approaching the Delhi High Court just asking for, I think, Henry's custody in exchange for dropping the CBI case. So Henry is so important. Henry can
is-
change the
it's all about
whole
him.
thing. Yeah.
So coming back to Sumedha's story, a major part of your story is also about the impact that this crackdown has had on the NGOs, which I have not really read another story that goes into this as much as yours. So do tell us with your case studies, what has the impact been, in terms of job losses, shutting down offices, and the whole overall picture.
The impact is massive. Yeah, like we were just calculating data for Oxfam India, Care India, Slick, and Center for Equity Studies, and over 2,400 people lost their jobs. And this number is very close to the number of people who lost their jobs in Byju's. And we have to understand this in the context that NGO sector is responsible for 2 to 3% of the GDP.
Okay.
And it's even if it's not a major contributor, it's a contributor.
Yeah.
And how in other way we can see the loss is that because we are based out of Delhi, and because of the limited resources and all, we were able to focus only on these big international NGOs or the very popular domestic NGOs. But if we understand the whole funding structure of the NGOs in India, we have to understand that it's the Oxfam India, it's the Care India, which has that kind of technical capabilities to get funding, to be able to apply for proposals from BMGF, like big donors like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or Open Society Foundation, like whatever it is. So like it's these NGOs. So when they get a big chunk of funding, it's them which allocates the small amount for various projects, for multiple projects to small NGOs which are distributed across the country. So if their FCRA funding has been choked, it's directly gonna impact the small NGOs in the country, across the country, despite the fact whether they have FCRA or not. So this is another big impact
that's a very
of
interesting aspect. If not directly, indirectly, how
indirectly.
it is affecting the entire sector.
Yeah,
and,
and so many people who might be working as volunteers in that sector. For example, in the case of Care India, which had to let go of 2,000 employees, which is a big number, only 900 of its staff was permanent. The rest was volunteer or working as consultant. So they were saying Oxfam India was not just Care, but Oxfam India were also telling me the same thing, that earlier they used to give permanent job to the person after 2 to 3 months of consultancy period, but now they are not able to do so, and 6 offices of them have been shut down.
And it's also like this is the sector that works towards the betterment of, usually a vulnerable section of the society,
right,
or betterment of any sort of section or community, which needs it. So that empowerment is so important, especially when we are still a developing nation.
Exactly.
So this is going to, I'm sure, affect other sectors as well, right?
True. And I don't know, but a lot of people have been telling me that India might not have been able to eradicate polio or fight against HIV. We didn't have such a strong NGO network who was working at the grassroots level in the health sector, along with workers like ASHA workers or Anganwadi workers, because they are very close-knit. This is very close-knit community.
Yeah, they have to work in synergy together.
Yeah, so either the government, is able to implement all its policy on its own, and then they can let go of the NGO sector if they're so afraid of the criticism.
Right.
But if they're not, what if they're not able to fully functional in that way and to be able to execute its policy in the right manner? Till that time, we need the sector, and it's good only if we accept that we need them.
Yeah, and when you look into the FCRA funding before it was cancelled, are you able to also find from where it was coming, who it was coming from? Is that data that is available?
Yeah, they have made, the act says that these NGOs have to make their data publicly available online.
Right.
So in their annual reports. So for example, in the case of CHRI, their major donor was Open Society Foundation, which is owned by George Soros. So exactly. So, a lot of media reports came out with investigative pieces that after CHRI's license was suspended, they came out with investigative pieces saying that, this was the NGO we have founded, was funded by George Soros. Yeah. So their director,
what about
Venkatesh
the other NGOs? What were the countries? Is there any data that indicates what countries had
we were
more?
not able to compile that data,
right.
But that would not have been difficult to pull out had the Ministry of Home Affairs was still regularly putting out its annual reports. So after 2013, no annual reports about foreign contribution regulations, about the about the NGOs complying with the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act has come out. So till 2013, we have those annual reports which mention like who are the biggest donors, top 15 donors, top 15 countries.
Yeah.
But why we don't have that data?
So they've just stopped putting it out.
They have just stopped
and
putting out the
before
data.
2013, every year it used to come out.
It was an annual thing. Another interesting thing which Ministry of Home Affairs has done is that Indian Express reported on that they pulled out all the data of annual reports and receipts by these NGOs because as per the Act, these data has to be made publicly available. But last year only, or I think this year, they pulled out that data saying that it's unnecessary for people to watch it. So that's why we have not been able to, like I would have loved to know like who are the biggest donors, which countries and like we need that kind of data. But unfortunately, we don't have. So a lot of RTIs have been filed in Ministry of Home Affairs asking for all the cancellation orders of those 20,000 NGOs. But the RTI activists have been denied those RTIs.
And Sumedha, you spent a lot of weeks on this story. I remember we discussed this. Like, what were the major obstacles you faced while reporting on this? Because I can think of so many options. So we would just like to hear from you.
The most difficult part was that they were all talking to me anonymously. And when people talk anonymously, it's very hard to, cross-check things and as reporters. So like,
I would have
loved if Oxfam India people would have, talking to me, not anonymously, but I understand where they are also coming from because they are very scared.
Like you said, they have their cases pending.
Yeah, they have their cases sub judice. And it's not just, like FCRA. There are a lot of things. For example, in the case of Center for Equity Studies, why they are afraid. In 2020, it all started from, I think, NCPCR, National Commission for Child Right Protection. They raided all the child protection centers set up in Delhi by Center for Equity Studies. So Center for Equity Studies the founder is Harsh Mandar. So, and we know Harsh Mandar has always been very critical of the government. So it started with NCPCR raiding all the chattel homes in 2020 or I think 2019. This is much before FCRA was suspended or their FCRA was suspended. So after NCPCR's, on the basis of NCPCR's findings, Delhi Police Economic Wing registered a case. Then on the basis of that case, ED registered a case. Then their FCRA was revoked. Then FCRA was revoked, saying that they were not complying with FCRA norms. And then on the basis of that, CBI case was also registered. So like they are like, bhai, ab to
it started with NCPCR and reached to CBI.
And it reached to CBI. And it's like all possible government agency you can think of. And then there was this very interesting anecdote I'll share with you. I was talking to someone in Care India. So I was asking them ki, like please come on record, just why don't you tell me these things openly? And I was asking for a lot of other information also. He's like, we don't want ED knocking at our doors, bhai, bas ab wahi bacha hai.
Yeah.
So this is like one common consensus amongst the in the NGO sector. But there's another common consensus is like, bhai, ab sab kuch to ho gaya, so we don't have any other option. We have to be vocal about it.
Yeah.
So I met both the kind of officers.
Interesting. Do read the rest of Sumedha's story, which is behind the paywall. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe and catch the rest of the details from newslaundry.com. Now for the last, and also read Pratyush's story just because it's
already old.
It's not behind the paywall, but it is a very interesting read. I think this is a topic that has been on everyone's...
It's a hot topic.
It is the hot topic. You've got the hot story. And now for the last section of our podcast, recommendations. I hope you guys know what you're going to recommend to our viewers, what to watch, read, listen to.
My recommendation for the week is from the New Yorker. It is written by Haruki Murakami, the running novelist.
Okay.
It's about how he, how running, to summarize it in one sentence, it would be like...
Isn't this the article based on which the book was... written
sure.
too? He has a book about running, which is like a autobiography.
So basically, it's like how running is helped him to grow as a novelist.
Yeah.
How it is a very important part of him over the last 33 years. So it's a very interesting read, and you'll get to know about how from his the jazz club he used to run in Japan to to how he started as a career as a novelist. And I really like the essay.
Love it. Is this not what I talk about when I talk about running? The book, is it different?
I'm not sure.
I guess he talks a lot about running then.
Yeah, then he talks. Yeah, he it's this whole essay is about running only.
Wow.
It's I also do
about,
why I like this his article, because I have also started running in last 2 months. So basically I was getting a lot of inspiration. He was talking about the same things when we feel let's not go to run today, we have some work. Then he writes how he convinced himself to go for running.
Yeah.
How privileged he is as a novelist. So it is the smallest thing he can do. So this also motivates me to go for running.
Very nice.
That's why this is my recommendation for the week.
I really approve of this recommendation.
Yeah.
Murakami can write about the blandest things and it will still make for such an engaging read. So I will take your recommendation. I hope others do as well. Sumedha?
I also have a recommendation from New Yorker.
Okay, this is the magazine of the month.
Go to website or what?
We are not being sponsored by New Yorker. But if they do want to collaborate with us,
then you can think
free subscription, please.
Tell your email addresses for collaboration.
Oh God. So the piece is titled Listening to Taylor Swift in Prison. Yeah, and I don't think I should be revealing anything about the piece because it's just not a reading, it's an experience.
Yeah.
And this man shares his experience about listening to Taylor Swift while he was in prison. And the subhead of the piece is, her music makes me feel that I'm still part of the world I left behind.
I would like to recommend Khufia on Netflix. So yeah, Netflix, Tabu, you guys can also. But yeah, it stars Tabu and my new favorite, Vamika, which I think you like as well since we watched her on Jubilee. It's a spy movie that is done very well. My colleague Saeed just called it cringe and I got very upset because I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, do watch it. I mean, Tabu if nothing else. And with that, this podcast is adjourned.
Journalism at Newslaundry is powered by the public, because when the public pays, the public is served. Visit newslaundry.com/subscription and pick a payment plan of your choice. Pay to keep news free and independent. Your future, and indeed the future of democracy, depends on it.